Welcome to Occhi Arts and Entertainment. I'm your host, Mark Vodery, and today we have a very special guest. He's played for many people. He plays the flugelhorn, as we just spoke about, the trumpet, most notably, but also saxes and the trombone as well. And we know him from the Billy Joel Band. And let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Carl Fischer. Thank you for talking to us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to spending some time. Maybe we can break bread and have a meal together when we get off the Zoom call and we see each other someday.
I will hold you to that. I'll hold you to that.
Let's go.
So how did you get started in music?
Well, first of all, again, thanks for having me. I was very fortunate, Mark. My father was a wonderful trumpet player, and I grew up very close to New York City and Long Island, close to the border of Queens. And man, my dad was just not only was a great trumpet player, who was just a big proponent of going out and hearing a lot of music. And he had a big love for jazz and played jazz great, and was a professional player. So being around my dad and wanting to be like my father, and being very close to Manhattan, and him dragging me around to all check out, the Count Basie band when they were in town, and Maynard Ferguson band when they were in town, and Buddy Rich and all these guys. And then one of my trumpet teachers, I was very fortunate because I had multiple trumpet teachers. But one of my earlier trumpet teachers was the wonderful Cecil Bridgewater, jazz trumpet player with Max Roach. So I used to hang out with Cecil and go check out Max. And so I just was very fortunate at the right place and right time, and had a great father who was and mother that was very supportive of me playing some music.
Cecil came after Clifford Brown. Years after.
Yeah, man, it's funny you're saying, because with Cecil, for 2 years, all I studied was Clifford Brown solos.
Awesome.
That's all I did for 2 years, man. So
yeah,
Cecil was a proponent of that. So yeah. I was in 7th and 8th grade playing Clifford Brown solos, and I was saying, why am I doing this? And now they still stick in my head. And sometimes I'll play something and Clifford lick will come out from those solos. I'm like, that's why I did it.
Well, hey, if you mastered Cherokee, then hey, everything else is pretty easy, right?
Man, you know the drill. You know the drill, my friend.
Yeah. So how did you get from studying Clifford Brown and other trumpeters, of course, to the Billy Joel Band? What was that progression like?
It's a long walk around the block. We'd sit here for about 4 hours if I really to tell you the whole story. But the Cliff Notes version and the most direct version is, not to be afraid of playing any type of music well, and not being, hey, I'm a jazz trumpet player, this is all I'm going to play, or I'm a lead trumpet player, or I'm a classical trumpet player. My whole thing was, especially growing up in the time I did, and in New York, good music was good music. It had substance. So, and I also noticed that guys that were very stereotyped into one type of vibe or one type of genre, they weren't as successful as guys that could, one day play a R&B show and the next day play a jazz gig. Next day, look at Wynton Marsalis, one of the best technical trumpet players and musical trumpet players, can play classical and jazz just as well, which is amazing. So the progression to get into Billy's band was, I just liked working, and I loved growing up in Long Island. I loved Billy Joel's music. So the music director of Moving Out, which was a Broadway show with Billy Joel's music, I was a sub on that show for a number of years, and they asked me to become principal trumpet on Broadway. And I'd never wanted to play Broadway, but this music was fun. Again, it was Billy's music. I wanted to stay home instead of touring like I was for a decade before that. And the music director of Moving Out, who was Tommy Burns, guitar player, asked me, he says, Billy's going to start rehearsing again in '05 to do some concerts. Would you like to come down? We're going to attempt to play the Freddie Hubbard solo on Zanzibar, which is one of Billy's, beautiful songs. And I'm like, would I? I'm a Freddie head, and Tommy knew that. And so that's how that kind of showed happened. And a little precursor is when I was doing Moving Out quite a bit, Billy would come in and hang out. and
Hmm.
sit in. And whenever I would talk to Billy, it wasn't about music. It was about, I'm a big fisherman. You can see I got my Cat Marine hat on. We talk about going fishing and riding motorcycles and just Long Island things. And,
Yeah.
we had very similar interests. So it wasn't always about music. And so he remembered my name. And when I showed up at rehearsal, it just kind of, I'm like a disease. I kept on coming back.
We won't say which one, but
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a recurring nightmare, really. No,
allegedly.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah,
Well,
16 years later, I'm still here, and what a great organization. He's the king of the crop, man. He's just such a good
yeah,
guy. Down to the truck drivers, everybody's treated equal, and it's a great scene.
yeah, and he's also a guy that he goes different genres, and it just seems to work. One of the greats. I mentioned earlier that you had played with so many people, but there's a great video of you with Maynard Ferguson.
Oh wow.
Amazing. We're gonna put that on our magazine site so people can take a look at that if they haven't. It's amazing.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
but who is your ideal musician to collaborate with, and why?
Who would be uh, who would be my ideal musician to collaborate, and why?
Hmm.
Uh, um, you know, I never. That's a great question. I never really gave that much thought. Um,
Hmm.
you
Well,
know
better question in that, if you don't mind, unless you had
uh,
an answer. What drew you to Maynard, and how did that come about? Because he's
what
just
drew
awesome. I think so many people have heard him and don't realize it was him. Amazing.
me?
Upper register is just
Yeah, Maynard.
phenomenal.
Well, I'll hit both of those questions really, because my first thing that comes to mind is the collaboration would be, believe it or not, Sting. I really like what Sting has done and does, and I've met him a few times through Billy, and he's come out and sat in with Billy at the Madison Square Garden, and he came and sang "Big Man on Mulberry Street," which is one of Billy's compositions, and sounded great. And I got the solo around him, and at the end of the vamp, we opened it up, and I just really dug his whole vibe. And that being said, too, I'd love to collaborate with Billy. I mean, he's so easy to work with on his gig. So, I mean, I could probably mention 15 or 20 guys I'd like to collaborate with, but I'm just wishful thinking right now. But getting
Yeah,
back to the Maynard. So, what drew me to Maynard would be the question? Would you say?
yeah.
Okay. Um, well, going back to what we were talking about in my upbringing and my when I was a kid. My father, being a great trumpet player, loved Maynard Ferguson, as any trumpet player probably will know of Maynard Ferguson. And my dad actually tried to audition for the Birdland Dream Band in the 50s, for
Wow.
Maynard's Birdland Dream Band. And so, long story short, he ran out of the audition. He didn't even take his horn out of the case because he heard the other guys playing so great. He just left. Long story short, though, my dad, after his sets, he would go and hang out at Birdland and have a drink with Maynard. So they became friendly. Fast forward to 30 years later, I'm hanging out with Cecil Bridgewater. I'm hanging in town, going. I'm a little kid. My dad and Cecil bringing me to all these places. One of the places was the Blue Note to see Maynard. It was like the
Hmm.
second or third time, and I brought a picture of my dad and Maynard in Birdland in the 50s. That picture
Wow.
had a cutout in the middle of the picture of his first wife. My dad's first wife was cut out. Maynard remembered my dad, was laughing about the ex-wife that was cut out of the picture. And here's a little kid. I'm saying, yeah, I play trumpet. I want to be like you and my dad. First hearing Maynard I still get goosebumps thinking about it because not only was he so intense and his sound was so big, you know, he had a command. I don't know if a lot of people are familiar. He did a record back in the 50s with Clark Terry and Clifford Brown. Maynard could play
Mhm.
some bebop, man.
Oh yeah. Oh
And he
yeah.
could get around a horn and play some bop. And the other thing that was amazing was the way Maynard would approach playing a ballad was so operatic like to me. And
Mm.
so just kind of like a Ben Webster, great tenor player, Ben Webster, approaching it like Ben, but it's a totally uh, different timbre and up an octave and on a trumpet, obviously, just to sing through his horn. So though seeing Maynard when I was younger multiple times and always waiting for his records to come out, and I just he changed my life. Still changes my.
Yeah.
There's not one day that goes. that I don't think about Maynard. Um, that I don't think about Maynard. And we're talking about there's
At the Blue Note. Nice.
yeah,
Very nice.
way later in years, my dad and Maynard and my at the Blue Note, but that stays on my desk. So yeah, 12
Oh,
years. He was like my second father. And when I was on Maynard's band for 12 years, my dad and Maynard became really great friends again. So that was kind of cool too.
man, that's awesome. And it's a great segue into your current project, which is Tetai. Could you tell us a little bit about that? It's a homage to the great trumpet players, obviously Maynard being one of them.
Oh, thank you, man. That's a beautiful. You did your homework. I appreciate it, brother. So yeah,
It was
Tetai is
easy.
uh, I'm sorry.
Very easy. No, I'm saying it was easy listening to your stuff, man. I'm just
Oh, thanks,
happy
man.
for you because it's great. Really
Thank
is.
you, brother. Thank you. So yeah, at Ted Eye is it's cool because I woke up one day. I always playing the pop thing with Billy. He always would have his pop things with lyrics. You tell a story. I'm a jazz guy. I like the bebop stuff, and I always noticed doing these pop concerts or Billy concerts. Not only was he telling a story, he would have visual scrim screens behind video screens behind the stage and kind of telling a story about the song. I woke up one day. I'm like, wouldn't that be cool to have guys who I like playing, and I've had relationships with a lot of people, but tribute to Tetai, tribute to evolutionary trumpet icons, stuck in my head. And there's a million great trumpet players. There's a million great tenor players. There's great musicians. But for me, it was guys that changed the music, not just um, the way they played. But I mean, you look at I took four trumpet players. Pops Louis Armstrong. Not only was a wonderful trumpet player, but he's changed American music for good. If it
Yes.
wasn't for Pops,
Yes.
there wouldn't be us. Pops. So Louis Armstrong, and then I looked at trumpet players again. Maynard Ferguson was a big fan of Dizzy Gillespie, and you look at Dizzy's. There's a video of Dizzy and Pops playing some stuff, and Dizzy coming in and bringing the bebop vocabulary, um, and changing the landscape of jazz and of American, of the music, man. So I'm like, wow. So and then I looked at, again, Maynard was great friends with Miles Davis, modal music and approaching that style of playing and the birth of the cool and all these types of things. Like Miles was not just a great trumpet player; he changed the music. So then the next question would be posed: well, why did you pick Maynard Ferguson? He didn't really change the music. That was one of the questions I had back when I first started Ted Eye. And my assimilation with my answer to that question, my assimilation with Maynard's was Maynard had direct contact with all these three gentlemen. Miles, him and Miles had a love for each other because, incidentally, going back again, talking about the Birdland Dream Band, Miles and Maynard used to play the same nights that they'd open for each other. So I've heard many stories about that, which are interesting. Maynard and Dizzy were really great friends, and obviously Maynard knew Lewis back in the day. So, but the reason I picked also Maynard was Maynard would play two notes, and it was him.
Hmm.
And Maynard changed so many young people's lives by going into high schools and colleges and working with the kids. Straight out of Stan Kenton. That was Stan Kenton's role Stan showed Maynard going in and giving back to students, in clinics and workshops. So not only did he change my life, I can name probably 150 musicians, Peter Erskine, a lot of great musicians that have been through his band, also that he's done clinics for at their schools. So I thought it was it was a kind of a homage, as I use your word because I like that word. It's a big word for a trumpet player. I don't know how to spell it, but that was the beginning of Ted Eye. Obviously, there's about four or five other guys I'd like to include on that. Obviously, the late great Freddie Hubbard. But the first
Yes.
four I
Yes.
picked was in that progression was Lewis, Dizzy, Miles, and Maynard. Freddie Hubbard, Woody Shaw, Winton. There's a million different guys I could talk about, and same thing with tenor players. And so this project was not only just musically an homage, but I wanted to tell a story multimedia wise. So when we go out live, I have video screens. The arrangements that I wrote actually are coincided with samples that we sample. I have Maynard talking about these guys. I have some samples of Dizzy talking and Miles talking and video of them. And so they're actually entwined in our arrangements. So it's kind of cool, man, because in a roundabout way, it's about, two steps for, going 10 steps forward and having always a footstep in the past. Because if you don't, respect and know what the designers of the music are doing, how can you move forward? And I always also too, with Ted I always wanted to do. I remember Maynard always saying when I did a lot of recording with Maynard, and Maynard saying, "Play like you, do it like you. Don't try to emulate. Emulation is the sincerest uh, form of flattery, and you have to emulate before you can move forward." Evolution, but he would always say, especially when I was trading with Maynard on some records, he'd always say, "Okay, do it again. Now play like yourself. I know when you play like yourself." So same thing when I was arranging for this project, was just trying to put a different take on it, and hopefully we achieved that. I was very lucky because the gentlemen of Ted I and my band are dealing, and I think we have a really fun project, and we look forward to doing it in the future more.
We thank you so much for sitting with us. We're going to actually include a link to your new project so that our listeners can take a look at that, and we'll have that all week on Occhi's website, Occhi Arts and Entertainment, and also on the magazine as well. But I do want to close with a quote from you. Oh, and before that, I do want, please check out What a Wonderful World. It was released 4 weeks ago. They put the video up.
Yeah,
Great stuff. It's a great take on the Louis Armstrong song. But you made it your own, and that's my little segue into your quote, which you touched upon. And these are words to live by. Make no mistake, the best process to follow as a musician is to emulate the greats and evolve into yourself, finding your own sound. And that's just great advice for not only musicians but other areas of life. But thank you so much, Carl Fischer. It was a pleasure speaking with you. And again, you can check out Carl Fischer. Please, again, go to YouTube right now and pull up What a Wonderful World. It's a great rendition. And check out the Occhi Arts and Entertainment website. I'm Mark Vodery. Thank you. Have a great day.
thank you, Mark. Beautiful, man.